Recording. All right, doing another tape talk here. Welcome to Tape Talk. My guest today is Troy Ohelo, who is a master 8-track fix-it guy, 8-track fix-it guru, I should say. Whenever I joined the Facebook groups, a while back, it was clear that Troy was the guy that you go to that everybody was going to for the answers of how to repair their 8-tracks. And anybody who's listening who doesn't know what I'm talking about, 8-tracks are something that need repairing and refurbishing, very much so, and more than any other format. So there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of do's and don'ts and stuff. And so Troy knows his shit. So anyway, well, Troy, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Nice to see you in person, Nathan.
Totally. Yeah. I guess, this is our
first.
first time to see each other in person. We've had
Yeah,
a lot of conversation over the years, so it's finally to good to put a face with it. I know you as being like, 8-track is your tape format of choice. I would guess, but you want to confirm that is that your main deal?
no, it was probably, well, when you say choice, I guess, yeah, it was my format of choice for a long time, but I've been in all of them, I think, except for what were those little CDs they had? But I've done CD. I still have tons of CDs. I have vinyl, some reel to reel, enough to get me into trouble.
I see. Yeah,
So,
I gotcha.
that 8-tracks was the big part of it. Cassettes too. But when I
Yeah,
grew up, the 8-tracks were still popular. My dad had them, and that's kind of I got started listening to the Beach Boys and whatever he had on his. I remember Sound Design home unit that used to
yeah,
be there.
yeah.
Play
Do
the
you
headphones.
just to get an idea of like what era you kind of got into it? How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I just turned 60 last January.
All right. Okay. And you're in California, right?
Correct. I'm in the desert here in Lancaster. Um, I joined the Air Force right out of high school and got stationed here after my first PCS was Oklahoma. So then I got out here in '86 and been here ever since. Really, the job market wasn't very good when I got out. Well, I'm originally from the Bay Area up north, San Francisco area. So I ended up staying here, and I'm still here. So
That's
this is
great.
home now.
That's great. I imagine the kind of Central Valley. That's kind of like Lancaster's kind of at the bottom of the Central Valley area. Is that correct? Kind of, or
They call it Antelope Valley. It's really north of Los Angeles, just over the hill, the
okay.
mountain. So yeah, it's just the start of really the Mojave Desert.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Um, so what when you and I ask everybody this just because I just want to know, what whenever you I mean, what's your earliest memory of tape? I mean, was it 8-track or was it some other kind of tape? I mean, or some kind of like memory that kind of sticks out in your mind from childhood?
I would say that I think the first time was just I got in it. Well, Kiss was big when I started out. Um, so that was like I think I was grade mid school, kind of high school, but early on was definitely my stepdad with we always went to the lake in the summer and I water skied and such. But it was always those tapes that he had. We even had the 8-track in the boat.
Mm,
So and
nice.
he was a big Beach Boys fan. So there was always the trailer had the home unit, and then there was 8 tracks in the boat, and that's probably the
Nice.
earliest I remember. And then of course when I started driving, then I had one in my car.
That's
Yeah,
cool. So were you kind of like one of the people, I mean, which makes sense to have done at the time, which to kind of progress with the formats, like once 8-tracks kind of phased out, maybe you got into cassette and CDs. Did you do that, or did you just stick with 8-track, or what?
no, I actually did. when I got in the military, you couldn't really have a lot, towed around with you. So what was popular then, and that was about early 80s, 82. Um, of course, Judas Priest Screaming for Vengeance came out, and I was big into that stuff, the early 80s, mid 80s. But at that time in the military, there's no way you can have a track. There's too much bulk there. So the
Yeah.
popular thing was that Walkman cassette player. So I had cassettes, and I remember
Mm.
going to I think it was called Sykes Mall in Oklahoma. I was first station Oklahoma in a combat comm unit, and I remember going to the mall and picking up Creatures of the Night from Kiss off cassette right there. So it was always really all the guys then were doing cassette because you had a bed basically and not much room to really venture into the other formats, you know.
Huh. Yeah, I remember well, you mentioned Creatures of the Night. It just triggered a thought. I really like the guitarist from Mr. His name's Steve Ferris. He's kind of
Mhm.
like he was a studio guy that kind of just got picked up, and they had their big popular period in the mid 80s. But I was watching an interview with him recently, and he was saying that I guess they Kiss hired him to do the guitar on Creatures of the Night. So he's the guitarist. It's the Mr. guitarist on Creatures of the
Oh,
Night, which I guess
yeah,
he kind
I
of just
don't remember all the names sometimes. I've probably forgotten more than most people know. I used to DJ when I went down to other bases like Honduras and stuff. But I was big into anything that tied to Deep Purple or anything. I mean, it was like any artist that tied together, Black Sabbath. I got into all that obscure stuff. Um, but yeah, there's some really great studio musicians and off musicians, that are great. They just, they're in the background. You don't know about it. In that time frame for Kiss, they really did use a lot of other players. They
yeah
were really on their way out. If it wasn't for that and Lick It Up, they were about done. So
yeah
yeah, it's a lot of great players like Toto, all the session players I got together.
yeah.
I listened to all that stuff too.
So
Music was
so
big
then
then.
you kind of you did the Walkman and cassette thing through the 80s maybe, and then I assume you went to CDs at some point maybe, and then
Correct. I think I had probably 100 CDs. I was still military, and I'd go to the BX and see these CDs, and I was like, "Wow, what's this?" And started buying them. And I had to have 100 of them before I even had a player yet.
hmm.
So, yep, I definitely went that route.
So
Yep,
you were just kind of like getting them in anticipation of getting a play, or just kind of like, hey, this is going to be the thing, so I might as well
correct. I
stock
just
up while I get
did
it.
it, knew it was going to happen, and got a player and just started playing them. And I still love CD. I really like all the formats. I think they all have their place.
Yeah.
Um, so
No,
partly
totally.
it's
I mean,
still a
I
CD.
my car has a CD player, and I'm not really like a streaming person, streaming guy. I mean, I'll check things out on YouTube, but I don't have like Spotify or anything like that. And so, I mean, but my car has a CD player, so I'll go to the thrift store and pick up CDs and just I'll listen to them there, but nowhere else really. Okay, so you obviously we're getting to the point where now you're just kind of like Mr. 8-track at a certain point. Well, how did you get there? What happened to get you back
Oh,
into
wow.
that?
Well, it was kind of a roller coaster. I mean, I always had worked. Well, I'm mechanically inclined anyway, so I work on everything. My cars, which, as I told you, I was working on my truck. I was putting a rear end and lowering it. I'm still working on it, tying the brakes back in. But I was always mechanical. So when I was a kid, my dad was or I grew up with my stepdad really ever since I was like 4. But he was a truck driver, so I just had to, like, when I had my car, I just had to go out there and start tearing it apart. That's how I learned. I wasn't, well, yeah, you could read the book, but that doesn't do much for me. So I just ripped things apart. So 8 tracks, it's like, hey, you're going to have something break. You just have to get into it. I mean, all these collectors now, the young collectors, and it's good for them, they have the luxury of all us old timers have already made the mistakes and been doing it for so long that they can just go, oh, okay, let me watch a video or let me just ask, and they can literally, they get all the information now. There's so much information out there. So that's a big benefit for them. Back in the day, I mean, I could throw some names out there. I don't want to leave anyone out though, but there are some of us way back in the day that it was just a handful of people really. So
Yeah.
you did whatever. People laugh because I sit there and go, well, I'm all for the back then we did the pads with the foam with the from the weather stripping and making our pads, and some better than others, but that's how we did it. And nowadays I like that there's a market. Like I can make pads all day long, but that's just not my thing. I don't get off on making pads. I'd
Right.
rather buy them from someone, let he's doing it, and throw him a bone. That's all.
Yeah.
I've always been that way. So
Yeah.
you make custom tapes. I think there's people that do that. I never wanted to go down that road while I was dealing with actual authentic tapes because I always
Yeah,
felt
you
it
know what?
was
Hey, you
like,
know what? I want to talk about that. That's one of the things I want to talk about with you. But just let's put a pin in that one just for a second, because we'll get to that, for
okay,
sure. But I want to know like what's your, so about what time did you or what happened to kind of like being you're just kind of like, hey, I just want to do 8 tracks again, and you kind of, or was it like you were
well,
restoring vehicles?
yes,
How did
uh,
you?
yeah. So my vehicles have 8-track players, a few of them. I still love to be able to pop in an 8-track. Of course, yeah, my wife loves you load the computer with that little thing, and I'm still like oblivious to it, but she puts a billion songs and I go, oh, that's pretty convenient. You can have a billion songs on this little drive and just plug it in. So
Yeah.
that has its place, but
Yeah.
I always was just into it. I got to a point where I only had so many, and then I just like the vinyl collection, it was like, oh, all of a sudden just did it again. And then before you know it, I had thousands. It was like, well, what am
Yeah,
I
man.
doing here?
And
But
especially
same with
back then,
vinyl.
I don't know, when are we talking about, like late 90s or something, when you kind of started getting back into it, or when was this?
Yeah, probably mid.
Oh man. So I mean, it's like I
Wow,
can't even
it was
imagine how
early.
dirt cheap and plentiful they were
Yeah,
at that
see,
time.
and that's another conversation. Some guys, but why would you like music wise? Some guys are just, and I fell into that too. You're just buying them just because you don't have it, but are you really going to listen to it? I had tons of tapes that I really didn't listen to. But I was kind of on that venture with the RCO, the record club onlys, because I was just addicted. I love history. So I was always looking for, okay, where's the other one? Where's the one that we haven't seen yet? And I compiled a list on fixation. That's just a way bigger list than I think 8-track Heaven had one. And I was back there with the 8-track Heaven guys, but that's really limited. But when you first look at it, you're like, oh wow, look at all these record club only tapes. But there's so many more. And even today, the other day, a collector sent me a pic and goes, look what I found in this batch of country tapes. And it was the last Jay Giles album. It was on 8-track, which didn't even have Peter Wolf. I don't think the album was very popular, but it was just amazing that that was even put on 8-track through the club. And I think it was a Columbia House
Yeah.
copy. So I just still to this day find like, wow, look at there it is.
Yeah. So
So
you mentioned 8-track Heaven, and you just kind of like glanced off. You mentioned fixation. So just for people who don't know, or just listen. Okay, so 8-track Heaven, that was kind of like they were kind of seen as the ones who kind of brought 8 tracks, just almost immediately after 8 tracks went out of style and were not no longer made. Then maybe a couple years later, I think, or once the internet started going, they got a website going, and that's kind of like they were kind of established as kind of like, hey, we're kind of archiving 8 tracks and just kind of here to be a home base for information 8-track wise. Now I know you have a Facebook group, 8-track fixation, which you started, but was that online as a website before Facebook at some point, or?
no, I hung with that 8-track Heaven crowd, but really back then there was, man, was there 12 or 20 of us maybe? The market, the collector group was so small, and I got into, I didn't I never charged a lot to rebuild. I basically did it to keep the format alive. That's
Yeah.
all I did it for. If I was trying to make a living and pay my bills, I'd be living in a cardboard box, right? There's no way. There's no way you're going to do it, you know. And I used to spend hours, and I had to stop recently because I'm trying to retire. So it's like, okay, I got to take a break and try and get my stuff done. Now, after I retire, I might go back and start rebuilding again, but right now I just have so much focus. I'm just trying to get out of that. But back then there was really a very limited amount. That didn't even take off till later. And luckily, like keeping the thing going, and you know, I used to do videos and do giveaways and all that, and it just got more popular. Now it's just crazy. I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, people we haven't even met. I'm sure there's a lot of 8-track collectors now. Well,
Yeah.
never would you have thought that back in the 90s or anything. There's no way. You were looked at like, oh, what? You know, nobody cared.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I know it's crazy how that, I mean, and just kind of just touch on something you said earlier about new people who get into it. It's just and that's kind of why I wanted to have you on here, because I knew that you were a guy who is kind of like in the new, I guess, I mean, I guess you would think about, I don't know when you want to put the beginning of the modern era of 8 tracks starting over. I don't know what date should be placed on that, but you were definitely you know, a guy who was there. And you know, as new people join the format and get in these Facebook groups and stuff, you know, they don't, you know, it's like it's easy for them just to have no idea that about you, or that you're there, you know, especially if you're kind of stepping back and everything like that. So you know, that's kind of why I wanted to have you on, because I, you know, because I knew that you were doing that, kind of one of the original people doing that, as it kind of moved into the modern era. um, Now, oh, and also I was going to say that when, you know, you're talking about you guys back then, and learning to, you know, like how, oh, you know, because the 8 tracks, of course, you know, they, I think I was talking to a guy and he was like, yeah, back in the 70s, of course, you know, a tape would get eaten in the player every once in a while, but we never had the splice break, you know, or the foam, or the felt never, a pad never broke down, you know. But that's something that started happening in the 90s, and that you guys had to start addressing. And you know, there's all these different things, you know, the lubrication drying up, and you know, just all the little specific problems that each manufacturer of a cartridge um, would bring about, you know, that we, it's like, oh, they each have their specific problems. So you guys kind of like formed this, you know, collective of information that, you know, now people who step into the format, they kind of have the benefit of all that, you know, cloud of information that's already happened. So, you know, whereas maybe, you know, it took you stumbling around for, you know, a few months or something, or until, or, you know, I don't know, however long it took you to get to where you were, you're like, hey, I've mastered this. Now, you know, people can just kind of like start mastering it, you know, in a lot shorter time, because like you said, the information is there thanks to guys like you
exactly.
know.
Yeah, there's a lot of information out there, and then sometimes it's you know, I see some stuff, and I bite my tongue. I just, you know, uh, it's like overkill. Some of it's overkill. You know, back in the day, you'd have this, and I think I still have a box somewhere, but it was like this toolkit, and I had you know, everything in there, and then I started doing it, and it was like, man, I don't need all this stuff. I literally only use a couple things to do the job now, and that's probably from experience. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying everybody could do it that way. I don't. I've done the use the old reel to reel to wind the tail. I'm like, I don't. I just do it by hand, but I
Yeah.
just do it because I could
Yeah.
see it. It's slower. If I find an imperfection, I could fix it while I'm going, not, you know, and that's just me. And people, and that's why I tell people too. It's about what's comfortable for you. You know, just because that's comfortable for me doesn't mean it's gonna be comfortable for everybody
Yeah.
else. That's just the way. And I'm more kind of spiritual with it. Like I'm one with the tape. I don't know if that sounds
No,
crazy
dude,
or
I hear
what.
you.
I just,
It's part of, I
yeah,
mean,
I'm
labor of
just,
love and all this kind of stuff, you know, starts coming to play with it. It's just now I hear you. I have, I mean, personally, I have like a no 8 track left behind kind of feeling, you know. It's like, you know, I will, I mean, as you know, I manufacture tapes, I do
Mhm.
things like that. So it's like I'm using it in a different way than I guess maybe a collector would a lot of the time. But there's an opportunity for me for something to break down, and I've mentioned this before with guys I've talked to that, where, a recording will not take, like, everything's should be perfect. I mean, like, I've got everything's rebuilt, lubricated, cleaned, replaced, the deck, recorded just fine before. So everything's fine, but then it doesn't work, like, and you're like, and I like to say kind of like a ghost in the machine or a ghost in the shell, or whatever. And I could just take the tape and in the trash can, but
Mhm.
I've got to, it's like I've got to do other I can't gotta run through a system of things, like, well, I don't want to throw this tape away yet. So I'll do a thing where I like run the tape out into another shell and then reverse it back in, so now it's upside down. Maybe that, like I've said before, the maybe all the programs recorded 1 through 3 were fine, but 4,
Mhm.
one channel's fine, and then the last channel is faint or gone, and I try to re-record it and it's still the same. So then I flip the tape, and a lot of times they fixed it. It was just like some kind of a
Okay.
little anomaly in the shell
Mhm.
that caused something to not just some kind of weird thing. And and sometimes that doesn't even do it. So I'll like put it into like an RCA shell, which those seem to record pretty stably. And then that will work, but it won't work in the RCA or in the Columbia shell, so it's just
Yeah,
I
and there's
and,
no way to
is
figure.
that a good way for me to spend my time arguing? No, but you know um I just don't want
Yeah.
to dump that tape, because
No, I
like you
hear
said,
you.
it's a spiritual thing.
Oh, I used to, I'd see a post and the guy's like, "Oh, I can't fix it. There's nothing. Just send it to me." And I do it for free. Just pay the shipping. Just because I love the challenge.
Yeah,
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 give me something you say can't be fixed because I'll fix it. It's just give me the challenge. I'll do it. I have no that those are the fun. I prefer working on. I like doing everything. I prefer to look at myself more as a restore, or not just rebuild. I don't punch holes. I don't cut labels. I look at everything like, okay, that's the best shape it's in right there in my hand. I don't want to cause more problems. And I've seen, and I'm not gonna go, it's not here to mention names, but I've seen other places charge more, and then they got their tape back, and I was like, "You're happy with that?" Because there's a bunch of holes punched in it. And
yeah,
I refer to flat packs because flat packs are like one of my loves. Even though it's not a record company, it's not '80s, but flat top packs are like my favorite part.
no,
Um,
yeah, I hear
I
you.
just
Yeah.
I don't know why they're just are. So
Well, they're
when I
recorded
see somebody
one
punch
to
a
one
hole,
speed, so it's the amazing sound
mhm,
quality for one.
exactly. So when I see one punch a hole, I'm like, ah, like I was, and I, like I said, I'm not gonna say names, but I was gonna buy some tapes, and the person had to rebuild them. I'm like, okay, well, you can't make somebody not. And then when they sent me pictures, I said, well, I don't want them now. What do you mean? I go, the holes are punched in on my. I don't want holes punched in my tape. So like,
Yeah,
oh, I like, and I look at that now. I don't know, and I don't remember what we were going to get back to, but when you grade an album, you grade it honestly based on the vinyl and the album sleeve.
hmm,
I don't know how people could price something that looks like it got ran over the same price as one that's mint. And 8 tracks. It's like 8 tracks is the like the shitty format. Oh, we don't care, and I don't look at it like that. I always look for the best. Most of the stuff I collected was the best copy I could find at the
yeah,
time. You might find one later if you're willing to pay or however trade or get it. That's just me. I always look at that. There's a condition there,
yeah.
you know. So,
It's funny. It just something you just said. What one thing there is a thing though, and I'm sure you know about this, which is that there's some kind of a weird little, I don't know what to call it, but where I'll have like 2 tapes or maybe like 3 tapes, they're all the same tape. One will look like it's run over, just been out on a dashboard, rug label just crumbly and bad shape. and you assume it looks like it's been played and played and played. The other one looks pristine, same album, but the nasty one will play, it sounds better somehow, and you're like,
Yeah, yep, and
what?
that's just luck.
But it's just like a weird thing. It's like the other one, maybe
Uh-huh.
you just broke the seal. I mean, it was a sealed tape. I mean, that's not always the case, but I have noticed that a lot with 8 tracks. So, there's I don't know, there's a funny little thing in there. What I was going to get, okay, so I don't want to get too far, or run out of time before we talk about your 8 track fixation group, and kind of like why you started that. I mean, obviously it's, kind of a community of people to properly fix 8 tracks. Do you want to talk about, how you, things that you
Uh,
repair? I mean, like how you got there?
so yeah, so you're talking about properly repair, and I'm kind of I kind of got used to just keeping my mouth shut because it seems like somebody always wants to argue with you, even though you've been doing it for 40 years or however long. But the fixation actually happened because I was new to this, like you're doing this, internet stuff. So I was on 8 track tapes, 8 track players and tape Kenny's
Yeah. The main
time. So
large group. Yeah.
yeah, large. And I was on there, and I was like, and I asked, I said, this would be, why are we just sitting here doing what we're doing, which is mostly what every group does. The same thing. There's no interact. It's so I had these ideas. I'm like, why don't I do like get on? I'd start a video. Um, Facebook's. You start the video like you're doing here,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'd do giveaways, and I'd show how to repair stuff, and I just did it live. Um, so I told, I guess I could say Kenny now because I've already said Kenny, but I said, hey, what about this? And they had no desire, like they didn't really care. So I was like, man, that kind of sucks. I wanted to go to the next level. So I somebody well, it's actually a friend of mine down San Diego, which you probably might know, Butch Charles. And he said, well, why don't you start your own group? I'm like, oh man, I don't think I could start a group. Why would how am I gonna really? So then he says, yeah, just start your own group. And it wasn't to take out another group or anything like that. It was just I had these ideas. And I guess I saw a lot of that with the vinyl groups. They would have giveaways, they would do these shows, and I was like, oh, I think that's cool. Why is the 8 track not the same way? So I just started the group, and that's really where it stemmed from
Yeah.
because I just saw extra, other things to make it more fun, I guess, instead of
Yeah.
just, and I guess as a repair guy, I thought, well, it's no secret. These things aren't like you don't need to be Einstein to figure out how to fix an 8 track tape. If you think you're Einstein, and I don't know, but it's like everyone can learn this, and I prefer people learn it because we all know in shipping. And by the way, your idea is great. I actually had an idea like that, but I never did it because I didn't sell and do stuff like that where you put
Oh,
the
you're
piece
talking about
in.
the secure strip thing?
Yeah, the little secure
Yeah.
strip.
Yeah.
I said, man, this guy just did what I was thinking about ages ago, but I never had it where like it was such a big problem that I needed to do it. It always came down to me for tension. If I got it shipped right, the tension right, I never had an issue. I very rarely ever had that issue. And if it did, I said, send it back and I'll send it back to you. I paid for it. I didn't care. It was just, and it wasn't, like I said, I didn't do it to make money. If I was trying to make money, like I said, I'd be in horrible shape right now
Yeah.
trying to, but, um, so,
So you got
um,
it. So you got a group going, and it's just kind of like centered around, kind of your principles of restoring 8 tracks. Do I'm curious. So I kind of want to talk about, or get you to talk about, some of the things that you do when repairing 8 track. I mean, maybe like maybe some common, some common things, or I should say, what's, or maybe some things that people don't think about, whenever they're repairing an 8 track, that you might want to mention. And also, yeah, some common ones or whatever, just some things that you notice that people don't do. Like when you see like somebody saying that they've repaired something and you can tell like, I don't think you did that, you know.
Yeah, I don't know if there's like I said, there's so much out there. I said I really, I clean them up. Um, Polishing, is good because it slides in the player better. There's reasons for that. I didn't get too technical. Cleaning the posts, always, if you have some, crud there, it always helps because a lot of times just cleaning the post and having it polished will make that thing slide. You don't necessarily need oil. And I don't, the thing with the Vaseline, I'm like, no, that just collects dirt. I don't know why
Yeah,
you want to put Vaseline
totally.
in there
Yeah, that's a
in their
thing.
eight tracks. I don't get it. But and then the oil, people argue about, oh, there's oil on it. Well, no, you're not supposed to put a amount of oil. It's like such a minute amount that stuff spreads
It
so much.
does. It
You
migrates and
know?
it'll just kind of go, it'll find its
Yeah,
way to the wrong place for sure. Yeah.
and really, if you clean the posts, you probably don't need that. You could test the tension and feel it. It's just like I say, it's a spiritual thing. You could just feel it. You just know.
Yeah.
You know when the tension's right by pulling the tape, and you just know by using your finger, and obviously wash your hands. I always said that. So
Yeah.
don't just grab your dirty hands and move the tape. But
Right. When
so
I
it was
first
just
started
about that.
messing, I kind of discovered 8 tracks in 2006 and just kind of hit the ground running with trying to learn how to repair. I didn't get into any of the Facebook groups until, man, I don't know, even like 2016 or 17. I'm not sure, but I had a guy. There was a guy who's kind of mentored me with that online and in like a forum and stuff. But anyway, um, you're just talking earlier about things that you thought, because I think there's a whole thing about where people, they think that like they have to do certain things, or because like tape is so fragile, and it is in a sense, in one sense, but it's also very rugged, and it's like a lot, like for instance, I used to wear like white gloves and stuff, when I would do it, and like when I first started, and then pretty quickly afterward, well, I don't know, after a time, I realized that this is just overkill. I don't need to. I mean, and I'm like, it's like I've got to take off the white gloves to do something else that I don't want to get, you know
Hmm.
those dirty, or I
I
don't
think
want to get stuff on it, so I'm just like taking on and off gloves and stuff. It's just kind of like,
you start out with these
but things like
intentions,
that,
I
that
think
were,
people like to make it bigger than it is.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, people always start out there, and that's fine. That's part of the process, I guess. But once you're doing it a while, you start going, "What am I doing this for? What am I doing that for?" Like this is my main tool, this pick, which is what I use for seals or transmissions, or I
yeah,
pull this thing out for like 90% of everything I do. And when I teach people, it's like, "What are you doing with that?" I'm like, "I didn't tell you to use that," but then they come up with these toolboxes that look like you're going to go work on who knows what. And I'm just like, you do see what I do with this?" And, after a while, and not everybody has the knack for that. But I mean, I literally open a cart from one end and fix the whole thing.
yeah,
There's certain tricks, and you got to sometimes just sit there and think about, okay, how's this thing work? Okay, what can I do to fix this without ripping or cutting the label or doing it? And I literally, and don't get me wrong, it's not like a 2 second thing. I mean, I do it pretty quick, but there's times when I'll spend an hour on a tape just to keep that tape intact.
yeah,
I despise back splices. The more splices and cuts, I see people and I shut my mouth now. Yeah,
yeah,
just cut it, and then you could fix it, and then put us. I'm like, man, is a quick fix just to cut it? Because I would untangle the tape in an hour. I would not. That was like a big no for me. Like I do not want extra because all you're doing is causing another point of failure.
right,
And I'm a
yeah,
big RCM. I worked for NASA, so my background's reliability center maintenance, root cause analysis. So when I see things like people like that back post, oh, it was on there. I go, well, yeah, but that's just another spot to wear. Does it need to be there? No. Well, then I hear, oh, and I actually started changing some of the plastic rollers to rubber. If you find the right rubber roller, it's going to fit right in there.
yeah,
If
no,
you
totally,
that big a deal about the plastic, but you know. And then I said, well, there's another path of failure. There's another spot for wear. And I'm trying to save something that's 50 years old.
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing if it was only 5 years old. Yeah, okay, I probably don't have to worry about that for another 20, but
Yeah.
that's just me.
We got 3 minutes left.
Three.
So the thing I wanted to get back to, no, I just wanted to get back to, I mean, and
And
I
we could
guess
do this again. I
if
have
you
no
can touch on
problem.
it, if you can touch on it, like I want you to say something about it. And when that is that the whole thing about custom carts and all that kind of thing, because, you and we had some friction at one point in time. And I think that but then we kind of started talking. We realized that we kind of had more of a common ground, conceptually, about the whole thing about people making fake, stuff. As far as like claiming is like, are you claiming this? Are you doing a literal reproduction, or are you doing like kind of a fantasy thing? So yeah, and so there's in a lot of the groups that you're a moderator in, you don't allow that for
To
imitations to be posted, and I respect that. And if you want to talk about that a bit, just for I'm sorry, a
to
couple minutes, but
to a point, I think I think in the beginning my thing was, hey, put a disclaimer on there just to say, hey, this is a reproduction tape, or because everybody has a right to do media transfers. Okay,
yeah,
so then say it's a media transfer. My thing was, all right, I'm into the purity, so I have and I don't, well, I could take a tape like an actual, and this isn't open, so this is Queen, the Works RCA. But if you're going to copy the label exactly and make like say a tape that's not been made, and you're making it look like it was, there's always that chance that somebody's going to take it and throw it out there on eBay or something. And I always felt that was wrong. If you have
totally.
a
Because
disclaimer, great. I don't care if it's on the back or what. Somebody should be able to figure out, hey, wait, this is a copy, which is okay, but you shouldn't be paying $400 for a copy.
yeah, because
And I
people
think
will
that's
do that on
one of
eBay,
those.
and
But yeah,
they'll
I see it even worse now, and that's one of the reasons I kind of slowed down and stopped. But okay, I'll show you my little project. This is the first time I've ever seen it. I
all
like
right.
custom tapes, but I try to stick with what didn't come out, and I don't make it look like a Columbia house with a blue border. Personally, I thought the blue border was ugly. So
Dude,
why are you making a tape
yes,
that's a blue border?
yes,
It's freaking
yeah,
ugly.
it
But
is.
the only intent is you must want it to look like an official tape, and I'm against that. So mine, and I don't know if you can see it very well. Like here's Deep Purple,
Oh,
Battle
cool.
Rages On.
That looks
I've been
awesome.
collecting the gold bootlegs because I use the gold cart, so I call it the Cart Doctor's tapes. And it doesn't say
Yeah,
Geffen or
yeah,
Columbia or any of that. It's just strictly a copy with a
yeah.
fancy label, and
Hey, I
that's it.
think we're gonna get cut off. Hey, I think we're gonna
Okay.
get cut off. But yeah, no, thank you so much, man. And we should do this again, and like kind of because we have more to say. I feel like so.
No,
Let's let this be a part
anytime.
one. Let's let this
I
be a
think this
part
is
one. Thank you
awesome.
so much, Troy. And